Wonderful. So as folks join, just take a minute to make sure you're muted. So great to see so many of you. All right, I'm just looking through the videos to make sure folks are muted. I think we're good to go. Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and kick things off. Again, my name is Megan. I feel like I should have like a little flow name tag here. Maybe I'll get one. I'm leading today's class and I'm really excited that you are here to take time for yourself. I'm going to remind you throughout today's activity to not take anything too seriously, to smile, to laugh at your flaws and know they can be improved, okay? Art is something that I coach you just to not take so seriously, just be in the moment, okay? And believe it or not, by focusing on each step of the painting as I guide you through, you'll be able to unwind and get into a little bit of that yang, of the yang in the zone moment, which really feels good inside, allows you to turn off your brain in some new ways, which is incredible. So that's a little bit of an underlying benefit that I'm sure some of you have felt in my classes. That's actually designed with intent for you to really feel that way. So another benefit of these classes. Perfect. We have more folks joining. All right, cool. The last person's in, unless another shows up. All right, so we're going to be painting this really fun fall, kind of modern painting today. It's going to be a large scale pumpkin. So if you've taken these classes, I give you offerings and flexibility of if you want to paint one pumpkin or if you want to paint two pumpkins. I often say, if you want to paint a small pumpkin, you can paint a small pumpkin. I'm going to paint a large scale pumpkin and it is going to take up the entire canvas. So if you want to do something different tonight with me and kind of follow along, you can. If you wanted to do it a little different, that's okay too. But I'm intentionally going to do a large scale pumpkin that is going to be hanging off both sides of the canvas. So again, it's fun to kind of explore and experiment with how big or how small things are on your canvas. So we'll go ahead and kick things off together. So if you just joined, you'll need a cup of water to rinse your brushes. You'll need a small plate to mix your colors, and you'll need a paper towel. No pencils are required. So I am going to pick my orientation tonight. I am going to do vertical, which is portrait. And if you wanted to do landscape, which is turning it sideways, you could do that. You can choose your destiny here. All right. So one of the first things that we're going to do is do the pumpkin outline first. So I'm going to have everybody mix an orange color. So who can confirm what red? I think I sent you all 2 reds, but confirm what reds I sent you tonight. If you can unmute or put it in the chat.
I only received brilliant red, but it's 2 tubes of the same thing.
Okay, so some of you may have received brilliant red. Some of you may have received
I have burnt sienna and brilliant red.
Okay, cool. So some of you may have received brilliant red and burnt sienna. We're going to start with the brilliant red. The burnt sienna is like a brownish red. I sent that as a bonus. So some of you didn't get that one. Don't worry. The brilliant red is the main component of red that we'll use tonight. So you're going to take.
If we don't have the brilliant red, what do we do?
If you don't have the brilliant red?
Yeah.
Okay. So whatever one you have, we're basically going to mix orange together. So you can use the burnt sienna or you could use the brilliant red. Either works. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an orange. So with the yellow that I sent you, you're going to make an orange. It's like 90% yellow with a touch of red. So I'm going to put some yellow on my plate. You can see I'm just doing a little bit of a dollop of yellow.
Hey, Megan, I got yellow ochre. Is that the same as what you're working with?
Yellow ochre. Yep, you can use yellow ochre. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll use yellow ochre. Yep, absolutely. So yellow ochre, if you have a brighter yellow. The yellow ochre I sent because it has more of a natural tone for the pumpkin. I love the yellow ochre. So I'll do a touch of the yellow ochre, which is right here. And this is actually the most common yellow that's used by a lot of artists. And then you can take either your brilliant red or your burnt sienna. The burnt sienna is going to be a little darker, which is fine. It's still going to make a nice orange pumpkin color. And you're just going to do a tiny touch. So like less than a pinky nail. So we're gonna make an orange together. So yellow and red. I'm gonna use the biggest brush that I sent you. So everyone got a large flathead brush or a large rounded tip brush. Either of those work. I'm gonna get my brush a little bit wet and I'm gonna wipe off the water drops. And I'm going to stir this around and I'm gonna make an orange color that you like. So if you put a lot of red in, it's gonna be really dark orange. You can always use a little bit of white to soften it. But this is the yellow ochre and the brilliant red. If you don't have the brilliant red, a tiny touch of the burnt sienna would work too. But you can see the beautiful tone of orange that yellow ochre makes. So pretty. So take a
And
minute.
Megan, I
Yes.
have a question. So
Sure.
I've made some, but what's happened before is I make some and then I don't have enough. And then when I go back, I get a different color. So am I better just making a whole gob of it first?
At this step, it doesn't really matter because we're just outlining the pumpkin. So if you want to make like a little bit of extra, you can. We're going to go through quite a bit of this. But for me, I'm just going to start with this and then I'll make more.
Mine looks more brown rather than orange.
Yeah. If you have the burnt sienna and you put a lot of it in, like a little bit will go a long way. I'll make what that tone looks like as well. You might need to just make more. So I'll make a version of this with the burnt sienna. A little of that will just make it really dark. If you add too much, let me see here. I'm just using what I have. So here's the burnt sienna. I mean, a tiny touch will go a long way. I think that's why it got a little too dark. Oh no. Let's see. Drop my paintbrush. So I'm just grabbing another paintbrush really quick. And if it's a little bit more brown, don't worry too much about that. If you don't like the color, it is a little bit more mustardy of a color. I'm just mixing this so we can see it here together. It's a little more mustard. What you could do is, if anybody doesn't like this color for a pumpkin, if it was me, I would just use this color. But if you don't like it, you can create a white pumpkin here instead of an orange pumpkin. And you can use like this paint color to outline the pumpkin, just like we are. And you could just do a big white pumpkin with some black and gray detail, like we'll do for the orange. I think a white pumpkin would look really nice. And then you could do kind of a background color, which would be really pretty. So if anybody wants to do a white pumpkin, in the chat, put that you want to do a white pumpkin so I can guide you through the white pumpkin steps. Otherwise, you can either use this orange color or you could use this mustard. It sounds like some of you didn't get the brilliant red, so I apologize, but this color is quite nice too. But there's
FYI, I had mine was very, very dark. I added a touch of white and it really brought it back to orange.
okay, cool. So adding a touch of white might help. Perfect. So let's add a little touch of white. See what happens. See, art's always just about playing with colors. I always leave time in these classes for us to do this too, because it's a big part of, ooh, so pretty. It does light it up a little bit. Look at that. Nice. A little bit lighter. I kind of like both of these colors. They're really quite pretty. I don't know, I kind of like the golden color for the pumpkin. Now I kind of want to do the golden. It's okay. I'm just cleaning up my brush so everybody can see those two colors. This is a good example of like picking a color that you want to use and just going with it. It's okay to have a white pumpkin. It's okay to have this golden color, whatever works. I have the orange made first, so I'm just going to use that one, but I do like the golden, so I might use it as an accent. But where we're going with this is we're going to get a little bit of the paint on your brush, and we're basically going to say, okay, where is the middle of the pumpkin? And for me, the stem is going to be kind of off-centered a little bit. So for me, I'm gonna find, well, what is the height of my pumpkin and where do I want my stem to be? And I like using my finger for some of that detail. So my stem is gonna be kind of right there. And I'm gonna do an outline for my pumpkin. It's about halfway. I'm gonna do an outline for my pumpkin and mine is literally gonna go off the page. It's gonna be a huge pumpkin. So it kind of comes down and it indents in the middle, kind of where the stem would go up. And just figure out what you want the shape of your pumpkin to be. It could be really rounded. It could be more rectangular. I love this.
This is with the largest brush.
This is with the largest brush and I'm holding the big brush on the side. So it has more narrow brush stroke, which is kind of fun. And you can, one tip that I always teach in these classes is you can get some paint on your brush and then you can kind of wipe it off a little bit to manage how much paint is actually on your brush. And this paint is really high quality. So it's a little bit thicker than traditional paint. If you've been in my classes before, you're getting used to it, but it's quite nice to work with. And then what you're going to do is we're going to create 2 ribs or rounded shapes to shape our pumpkin. So we're going to start in the middle and I'm going to do a rounded shape here coming down. And I'm going to do another one over here, kind of a rounded bend. So we're doing 2. And then in the space between this line and this line, we're going to do another one on each side. So I'm going to find an equal part. And these are just guidelines. So I'm going to do that on each side, equal parts. Lines can go off the page. Maybe if you want to bring in some rounded lines on the bottom to kind of create that overall piece, you can do that. And this is where we get to have a little fun. So those guidelines, we're not going to cover those up, but we're going to slowly just start painting inside. So what we're going to do is get a little bit of paint on your brush. And I want you to dip your brush in your water cup. So there's a little bit of water and a little bit of paint on your brush. And on the interior of these lines, I'm using, you could either use the wide part of your brush or the flat part. We're going to start to fill in. Now dip your brush in a little bit more water. This is going to create a little bit of opacity. And we want the middle panels of these pumpkins. We're just going to start to fill these in. And you can dip your brush in a little bit of water. You can see how there's some lightness. We're just filling in our pumpkin. We don't want to lose sight of those shaped lines. That's why using a little bit of a lighter tone. But then you can play with blending. So I'll bring this a little closer. You can see using a little water will create a little bit lighter of an orange tone. Or if you're doing this mustardy color pumpkin, or if you're doing a white pumpkin. If you're doing a white pumpkin, you can just leave this all white. Just having those rinds is a good step. And you could do those rinds any color if you did white pumpkin. All right. Typically the black and the gray work well for white pumpkins. But again, some of you might be doing more than one pumpkin. Some of you might be following along. So we're going to continue this step for each area. I want you to try to do a little bit lighter of a color in between these lines. It's a little bit of a challenge. So I'm using a little bit of paint on my brush. Ooh, so pretty. Dipping my water cup looks like orange juice. It looks quite mucky actually. But I'm using a little bit of water. If you have any drips, no worries. Feel free to grab your paper towel and blot those right up. You can't hurt anything. We're using acrylic. It dries pretty quickly. You'll get a sense of how much water you need on your brush. You don't need that much. You'll see how the paint will just start to move just a little bit. And you can still see, I can see those pumpkin rinds, those lines. Now, if you start to lose track of some of those lines, feel free to mix like a little bit of a darker orange if you wanted to have those stand out. We will be using black to highlight those shapes that we put in, but we're just filling in our pumpkin as a first step. This is where we can all settle in and relax into today's class. Right, so you can see, I can see my divider line here, and I'm just slowly filling in my pumpkin. Go nice and slow. Try to follow the shape of the pumpkin as you're painting. So I'm painting vertically. I'm painting up against a rounded line, rounded area. So I'm following that, and I'm doing a smooth, continuous brush stroke to fill this in. And this may be a little too light. It doesn't matter. I can always come in and fill this in. These are all just first coats. As artists, we always do multiple layers to bring an element to life. One of the things I teach in my classes, if you've been here before, is I teach a lot about depth around using opacity and shading and a little bit of brightness to bring objects to life. It typically takes 2 coats to apply that look and feel. So these are all just base colors. If you're not crazy about it, don't worry about it at this point, because we're going to add more on top. But just take a minute to fill this in any way that you wish. And it's kind of fun. See, I have some darker spots and some lighter spots, which is kind of neat. We all know that pumpkins are in tons of different colors and shapes and varietals. So if you want to add any spots or warts or a jack-o'-lantern to this, you can do that. If you wanted to do a leaf painting or drawing on it, these are your pumpkins. So in the picture, there's like a beautiful, like checkered black and white bow that we're going to put on this, which is going to be really pretty. And somebody wrote welcome on it. We could do that as we get towards the end, but we're just doing these base colors for the pumpkin. But I'm constantly going back and getting a little water on my brush to move the paint around. That's where you can see this blending techniques. And I'm just doing single brush strokes. So this is a great inspiration for you to practice blending and moving paint pigments around. So you're kind of playing with blending water with paint pigment, and you can see how a lighter orange is created and how a darker orange is created. And you can see that the shapes and the bend of my brush strokes are following the pumpkin. That's helping significantly kind of hold its shape. I could have done just straight brush strokes down, but I'm being mindful as an artist to follow the shape of the object in front of me. And if you don't have those lines, it's okay. You can always apply those lines at another step. So don't worry about that too much. So again, a little bit more paint. We're almost filled in. Some of you are probably ahead of me. I'm just going a little slower. I know sometimes I'm speedy through these, and everybody paints at different speeds, so there's no rush. I have folks in these classes that like to take their time, and I encourage you to take your time always, because this time is for you. There's no rush. All right, so the pumpkin's going to dry. That will be a good thing. I have a really fun next step. You all are gonna either gonna love it, you're gonna hate it. I think you're gonna love it. We've never done anything like polka dots before, and I have a secret weapon. Oh, one moment. I have a secret weapon we'll do. So everybody take a minute to finish up your pumpkins, and then we'll shift to the next step. Let me just make sure that everybody can get in here. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to get you all going with the next step. I will unpin myself. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready for the polka dots, if your orange pumpkin is painted. It looks like a couple, give me a 1 more minute if you feel like you need another minute with your pumpkin. Okay, I have minutes. You people that need 1 more minute, you got your minute. I think I had a woman just call me that might need some help getting in. So take a minute, fill in your pumpkins, no rush. I'm gonna give this woman a call back. I think she might be trying to get in. So please let me know if you need anything. Okay, perfect. Yay. Okay, that was a full minute. And that was not somebody trying to get in. It was a gentleman with the wrong phone number. How convenient. All right. So we'll go ahead and jump in to our next step. I'm going to go ahead and re-spotlight my screen. Okay. So we've never done this next step before. I'm going to get a little crazy, a little courageous. I'm going to have you grab, give me a thumbs up if I sent you, did I send you a blue? Give me a thumbs up if I sent you a blue. I don't think I did. No. Okay. Why don't you just grab your green then? Everybody grab your green. Give me a thumbs up if I sent you your green. Pretty sure I sent greens. Okay, cool. Thanks, ladies and gents. So what we're going to do is we are going to use the cap of the green as a stamp. And we are going to put black polka dots on our background. And we're going to do it in a very, very organized way. Okay. We're not going to be 4th graders and just stamping it all over the place. We're going to do actual rows and columns and things. Okay. So the green is going to be our tool, but we need our black paint. Okay. So I'm going to have you take some of your black and put it onto your plate. This is probably 2 thumbnails worth, ladies and gents. And I could have you all paint 30 circles, but you know how long that would take us? It would probably take like an hour and a half to paint 30 circles. However, we have a round tool that happens to be in your paint kit. So we're going to use this. All right. So we're going to do this together. So we're going to be very thoughtful on how we add these dots. Our orange pumpkins are going to dry. They're not done, but step 1 is drying. We're going to take our green paint closed and we're going to dip it into the top. Oh yeah, look at that. Woohoo. How about that for a stamp? So we're going to make sure there's enough on the edges because we need the edges of this to be covered. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a row across the top first. And I want there to be space in between each element. So do 1 as a starting point. And then I want you to come over, leave maybe like 2 or 3 inches. Oh God, I gotta hold this a little straight here. Okay, maybe do 2 dots and go back and get more. Try to keep your spacing equal if you can. Mine's not going to be perfect. It's okay. You can go back and get a little bit more. I have my canvas turned so it's straight, so apologies.
Excuse me, Megan, mine is making the ring, but not filling in the solid no matter how much paint. Is that okay? I'll just go in with a brush later.
You can. I put a lot of paint and it's filling.
I
at
did
the
too,
bottom.
but it's okay. I'll try more.
Yeah, you can totally do it the other way though if you want to. Either way works. You can go in and fill it in 100%. See, look at that one, didn't fill in all the way. That's okay. I can always, there's like gobs of black paint on here, which I'm sure many of you are noticing. That's okay. We can always go wipe some of that off. So this is what we're doing is on the 2nd row, we're going to do it in between. It's like it's a patterned wallpaper. This is so fun. Okay. So rinse and repeat. You're going to do a 2nd row, but you're going to do the dots in between the other ones.
Are you using just the tubes to make the dots or the?
Oh yeah, we're using just the top of the green one. Yep, we're just using the top of the tube. We're being resourceful here tonight. Yep. And I'll come over here and do a little half dot over on the side. I'm gonna come in here with a paintbrush after, ladies and gentlemen, just to kind of clean up. There's a lot of extra black paint. But you're gonna rinse and repeat all the way down. And then we're gonna go clean up the dots. And if you wanted to take a minute and, you know, do a couple rows, go clean up the dots, you could. I have a couple of white gaps here and there. Especially if you're starting to run out of black paint. I'm just gonna grab a small brush. This is a number 3. I'm just gonna kind of grab off some of this black paint and maybe put it back on my palette so I can use it.
Are you putting black and then green on top of it?
No green. Nope, we're
Oh.
just using the end of the green paint container to do the dots.
Okay.
But I have a lot of black on my palette and we're using that to dip the top of the green in. So I'm just wiping off some of the extra black paint so I can use it for the dotting. So I like that it covers, but we don't need to waste all of this. So I'm just doing a little sweep. Kind of like you're wiping off the extra cake batter when you're, you know, cleaning the sides, rounding the sides. There we go. Because I can use this black paint to finish my dots. But this is just a fun new technique. This is one of the things I love about art is you can find anything in your household, any tool, and you can use it to create art. Like people make art with forks all the time. Has anyone ever made, like you could go and paint a leaf outside and make art? Has anybody used any other objects in your home to like make something before? I'd love to hear if anybody's gotten creative in that way. Maybe it was an accident, maybe it wasn't. Everybody attempts to do things differently. Lots of black paint. So I just kind of wipe some of those off. Now I have more black paint I can use to dip my cap into as my tool. So we're just going to take a few minutes, line it up nice and even. And this is just a different type of background. You're going to show this to your friends and they're like, oh my gosh, how did you get all those perfectly even dots and spacing? It's like you all had this magic trick up your sleeves. And if you do just outlines of the dots, like if you don't put a lot of paint on, you can go and fill that in. That's not a big deal. All right, so that one's just an outline. That's all right. My lines and my rows are not perfect. I do not strive for perfection in these classes because we're here to have fun. All right, just gonna work my way down. This is where we can kind of unwind as we paint. This is a nice, easy inspiration for us to wean ourselves into the holidays. Our inspiration for December is candy canes, which is really quite fun. We're doing like green background with candy canes and this really sweet design. It'll be really fun. And I'm excited to share that we'll be continuing these classes in Q1 of next year. So a big thanks again for ARP Vermont and our continued partnership. And my business, we've recently just launched watercolor classes. So if anybody's interested in doing more art outside of these classes, feel free to take a look at my website. Let me know if you're interested in doing other art activities. But we just released some watercolor classes, so that will be fun. So I am working my way down. I've only done 5 rows, ladies, I'm sure, and gents, I'm sure you've done very similar. But I'm just gonna do outlines. I think Miss Renee's had just outlines. I'm gonna fill this in with paint. Might be a little more quicker, but I can at least get my shapes in. And some of you might like some of this like abstract, like if some of the holes are showing through, and it's kind of fun. I'm just using all the black paint that I have. Don't forget to do like the half circles on the left and the right side of the paintings, just to kind of like make it look like wallpapers going off the edges. I'm going to get a little bit more black paint. And then you can fill this in. You can fill these dots in if you wish. Excuse me. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. But this is a nice relaxing part. Hopefully it's not stressing anybody out. You all got this. So as you come down to your pumpkin, you're going to come into some funky areas. Don't worry too much about coming all the way down or filling in strange areas. Just do your best, because we're going to be putting in leaves and a stem and stuff on top of the pumpkin. So don't feel like you need to come all the way down. Just come as far down as that allows. There we go. I don't know, it's kind of funky with these holes open. Kind of like it like that. So you can see, really funky, really fun. I might leave some of these open. I don't know. Does anybody like it like that? I do. I think it's kind of fun. Makes it look like a little bit vintage. I might fix the edging. So I'm also just taking a paper towel and kind of cleaning off my black cap. If you wanted to stick in your water cup and kind of like swivel it around. Oh yeah, that works good. You can kind of swirl it around the top of your water cup. That works. Getting a clean paper towel. We're going to use our green for the leaves, but we're going to obviously let the black dry first. But getting a clean paper towel to wipe off the cap is good when you're done with that. You could also maybe dip your paper towel in a little bit of water. I'm sure that would help. There you go. So let me know how I can help in any way. I'm excited to see how this stuff is going for everyone. I thought it'd be a fun thing to try. Look at, I got most of the black paint off that cap. That worked pretty well. I think that was a success. I'm just going to come in and I'm going to just do some basic outlines to some of these circles. Again, I'm not striving for perfection here. I am just kind of finishing them off in a way that is important to me. I might leave like a little white showing through here and there. We'll see. One of these classes is, it's important just to take you can take a deep inhale through your nose. And exhale through your mouth. It'll feel really good. If you do that 3 times, you'll feel like a brand new person. Take just a few minutes for yourself as we're working on these details together. Big exhale feels good. Mindfulness is a really powerful thing. And I'm leaving some little white dots, which is kind of fun. If you wanted to fill them all, you can fill them all. I'm just kind of wiping off the extra goop and just making sure that they're as round as I want to be. By wiping off that goop, it'll just make sure it's not going to smudge if you paint something on top of it, etc. because above the pumpkin, we want that to dry because we are going to be painting leaves and a stem, etc. So we want to make sure that the dots above the pumpkin dry as quickly as possible. These ones. So if there's any extra paint, take a minute, kind of wipe it off with your brush. You can spin your brush on your plate, kind of clean your brush off. Now we're using acrylic. It does dry pretty quickly. But I am just working my way around. And another thing that I did this week that I wanted to share with you all is I painted Canadian geese. And I know that some of you have been asking to maybe paint Canadian geese in the future. So if anybody's interested in painting Canadian geese, maybe next year, that could be a really fun activity for us. I will take it down and show you all what this looks like. It's really different. Look at these Canadian geese. So fun, right? Really fun and different. Had a blast painting those. I'm always open to your ideas on what you might want to be painting next year. So please feel free to let me know what inspires you for the new year. And I'm happy to make those considerations as we make our selections. Oh, I found a goopy one. Anybody find big black goops anywhere? Oh, here's another one. And any extra black paint that you have, you can probably put it back in that tube. We can do that after though. All right, I'm checking all these black dots. Oh, there's another goop. All right. So I'm gonna give everyone just a solid like 2 more minutes just to finish up these black dots. We want them to dry, which is really important. So I want, try to like, don't touch the bottom ones anymore if you can, because we need that to dry to do some of our next steps. If there's any extra black paint, kind of wipe it off with your brush. Help it dry more quickly. You can also do a couple more brush strokes on top to like move it and even it out. Sometimes that helps it dry more quickly as well, like if it's too thick in one spot. And then I have extra black paint on my brush. So you can take it and you can spin it so it comes off. So I have like a new pile. And let's see if I can get any of this black paint back in. It might be difficult, but we can try. Maybe. Yeah, you can scoop some of it back in. So if anybody doesn't want to waste paint, you can always kind of push it back inside the tube. It depends how much extra you have, I guess. Some of you might not care. Some of you might have a lot of extra black paint. That's all right. All right, so I'm giving everyone a few minutes, maybe another full minute to finish up the black dots. And then we're going to pivot to our next steps. If anyone needs anything in the meantime, please let me know. I'm excited to see how everybody's black dots are coming along. This black paint is going right back in there. Kind of making sure the hole is cleared on top, banging it down, and the paint is going right back in there. So if anybody has a lot of extra black paint, you can.
What colors, I'm sorry I came late. What colors do you use to mix the orange?
Yeah, so it depends if you have, do you have brilliant red or do you have burnt sienna for your red color?
Brilliant, Rouge Brilliant.
Okay, so you have the brilliant red. So you're going to use your yellow ochre with a tiny touch of red, and that will give you your orange. A little red will go a long way. And my pumpkin's oversized, so it's kind of hanging out. So once I'm done with that black, I'm just going to put the cover on it and set it to the side for right now. All right. And I don't know about you all, but I got a little messy with this black paint, but that's all right. It'll come off of our hands. So one of the things that we could do next is we're gonna add a little bit, we're gonna let our black at the top dry, our polka dots. We're gonna let that dry. We're gonna add a little bit of lightness to our pumpkin. So we're gonna create a little bit of highlighting for our pumpkin, which will be really quite fun. So I'm gonna have you grab your white and we're gonna grab a clean brush. So maybe if you wanted to use your big brush, you can. Maybe grab the next size down. So a 4 or a 5, even a 3 would be fine. Whatever the next size down. Everybody has a medium sized brush. And what we're going to do is this. We're going to put I have a little bit of this pumpkin color left. Now, if anyone's doing a white pumpkin, I'm just going to check the chat really quick just to see. Nice. Let's see here. Okay, cool. I don't see anybody's doing white. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to, I have an orange right here. I'm going to take a little bit of my white. And I'm going to put it in the middle of my plate. I'm going to make a light orange. So a little bit of white right here. I also have real white over here, but I'm going to make a light orange. So I'm going to take a scoop of my orange. I'm going to mix it with my white for a lighter tone. This is going to help us. We're going to add this in to like the middle panel of our orange of our pumpkin to create some highlighting colors. So what we're going to do is you don't need too much of this paint. So just get a little bit of it on your brush. And we're just going to find these ridges. So where these lines are that we use on the inside, we're just going to do a few brush strokes just to create a little bit of lightness. So if it's not, you can see I have just a little bit of lightness here. See how you can see these little lines? If it's not light enough for you, go and grab. We're just doing a few lines. See that how it's highlighting the ridge of the pumpkin? I'm just doing some lines coming down. Creating a little bit of brightness, kind of reflecting off of the pumpkin.
Your hand is covering your brush. Are you using it on the wide part of the brush or the skinny side?
I am using this is a number 2 brush. You can grab like a 3 or a 4. I'm using a fairly skinny one. But I'm
Okay,
just creating a little bit of lightness on these panels.
okay, thanks.
So no worries. And sorry, I'm a lefty. I need to figure out a better way of showcasing this. But you can see here that, there we go. And I want you to play. This is where you can be playful. Maybe get a little bit of your orange and put it on top of this color and start blending it in a little bit. You can put a little bit of water on your brush. I'm using a really small brush, but it's okay to use a little bit of water to help with blending. And we'll add a little bit more punchy of a white, but we're just creating a little bit of brightness on each of these panels. I'll show you what a true white looks like if anybody wants to consider that. Like you can go as bold as you want. Sometimes with these paintings, people go like really bold. I'll show you what it is. This is like true white. If you want to do true white highlights, you could just do true white highlights. This is what like a white, all white highlight looks like. See that? Figure out with a lighter tone how you want to highlight each of these panels. The color that I'm doing right now is just white. You can see how it's allowing it to stand out quite a bit. The nice thing is that if you don't like it, you can always take like this lighter orange and kind of pepper that in too. Depends on how abstract you want it to look. You can kind of take this lighter orange and pepper it in with the white if you wanted to. Doesn't matter. But this is a great risk-free way of just experimenting with where you might want to add in a brighter white or an orangey, a lighter orange color. but you can see we're just highlighting the shape. We're gonna put a lot more layers on top. And we're also gonna add in a little bit of a darker orange in 1 minute using that burnt sienna. So this is just some of the lighter tones in the middle of the panels, and the panels are basically in between these shapes. So we'll be adding in some darker tones in just a minute, which will be really fun. And the reason why we're doing the pumpkin right now is because we're letting all the dots dry. So we can do the stem, and we can do the leaves, and we can do the bow. So that's why we're working on our pumpkin now. So you can see I have a little bit of white, which I like. It's creating some brightness. The white highlights in the pumpkin matches the white in the background up top, which is a good thing. So maybe I'll add a little bit more white just to show you what it looks like. Again, if you don't like it, you don't need to do it. And just know you can always paint over something if you paint something you don't like. That's okay. I feel like if we know we can cover something up, it promotes you to maybe be a little bit more risky with trying to do colors because you know you can cover it up. At least you're listening to tell you that you can cover it up, but I'll always help you cover something up, don't worry. When I painted the Canadian geese, one of the beaks was too big, and I used it as a great example of saying, hey, I told you could cover something up and fix it if you wanted to. Let me show you how to do that. So it was a good example of that. So I like, in this example, I like the white. I also like this lighter orange. So just to show you, this is my lighter orange right here. And then I had my white that I was just dipping into for some of the lighter areas. Now, if anybody wants to get a little courageous with me, we can add a little bit more contrast. I'm going to take a tiny touch of this burnt sienna, and I'm going to add a little bit of brown. Now, the way I'm going to do this, and I'll show you what it looks like first. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to, but I'm going to take a little bit of water. I'm going to do a water wash. So I did a tiny, look at this tiny speck of burnt sienna. This is like a brownish red color. Maybe I'll mix it with a little bit of my orange, but I put water in here too. So I'm doing 2 or 3 drops of water to create this water wash. This water wash dilutes the opacity, so it looks like it's not so dark and solid in color. So what I'm going to do is, along the inside of each of these panels, I'm going to do a little bit of a darker line to outline these panels. And I might even use my finger, ladies and gents, to smudge this in. Now, if you want to get even a little bit more fancy, you can use the tip of your brush, and I'm using a small brush, and you can kind of work it in to each of your panels. So it's basically blending in this watery mixture so it fades in to all the other colors. I'll do a little bit of this if anybody wants to try it, but it's basically fading in, and I'm going kind of inside of each of these panels. It's creating a little bit of the shading. So you can see here, I'm creating a little bit of depth. You could even take, and you could even mix this color with a little bit more orange. Now for this orange, some of you might be already paying attention to this, for this pumpkin. We used a regular orange color. We used a lighter orange. The more colors or tones that you bring into an object, the more realistic it could look. So the example that I'm sharing with you is basically saying, hey, we're bringing in some darker oranges. So we're creating a little bit more of a shaded characteristic. If we could sit here for 2 hours, trust me, and we could paint this pumpkin to just be ever so perfect, and we could bring in all these tones. The reason I'm just spending a couple minutes, because I want to show you what it's like just to spend a few extra minutes of bringing in some darker tones. So it's creating depth on where this pumpkin's shape curves and bends. So I'm doing it on the inside, kind of on each side of the line. So the panels are going to stick out, And you can see the difference. See how the darker tones on this, for me, it's my right side. And then you can see how this is lighter. You can see how the darker tones are grounding this pumpkin.
I'm just finishing up my white. So what color are you using for that?
I'm using my burnt sienna and a little bit of water. And I also I mixed it with a little bit of orange too.
Okay.
So we're using this as our like darker contrasting color for our pumpkin. And I'm really just kind of following these rinds to create a little bit of shading. So this is all just really experimental. You can use your finger to smudge. Really what we're going for is in between these panels of the pumpkin are a little lighter. And then if you wanted to do this darker ridge line on these other lines, you can. It's totally optional. I think it makes a big difference. We're letting our black dry. It's just a new technique that you can learn and play with. I have water on my brush to help blend this color in. So you can see how I'm using water to blend that into the edge of the panel so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. Just kind of work your brush with a little water. Maybe use orange paint and a little bit of the burnt sienna. You can mix another color too. This is just for you to consider. If this seems like it's too much for you, you don't have to do it. But sometimes these are like the level 2 tips and techniques that people like to try to really just expand. That one has a really dark line. So some of you might like that really dark line. That was with just burnt sienna. So let me just do another really dark line to see if anybody else likes that. See, that looks kind of cool, right? Because it's tying to the darker contrasts up top. This is burnt sienna as the line of the pumpkin. So if anybody wants to use burnt sienna to outline these pumpkin panels, you could do that. In the picture, they use black, but this is another good alternative. So we're just outlining the edges. I like to use a little bit of water just to soften each side of those lines. Kind of helps bring the shading into the edge of the pumpkin panel, edge of the pumpkin ridge. There are so many ways you can paint pumpkins. That's why it's, for me, offering a little bit of a different approach, at least considerations of how to fill it in is always good. All right. So you can see our pumpkins warming up a little bit, bringing in these really pretty hues and tones. And if you paint something you don't like, don't worry, you can always cover it up. And, you know, to be mindful of time, we're not going to spend a ton of time here, but I just want you to know you could really spend a lot of time blending and playing with how you bring in these darker tones for like where these ridges are. You could use a brownish orange to really blend in. But we have a lot of other details to do tonight, so we're not going to go too crazy, but don't hesitate to like mix a little bit of the orange and the burnt sienna together to create some of these intermediary layers. You can see it helps just blend it a little bit. Kind of fun. All right, my black is still drying, which is okay, but we'll go ahead and we'll pivot and I'll check in with the group. Maybe we'll do our first show and tell, our flip and reveal here. We'll remove my spotlight and check in. Look at all these polka dots. Oh, I'm so excited to see them. All right, when you have a minute, I would love for you to flip your picture around, show off your work. Ooh, Terry, nice job. Awesome. See, Leslie's is a little lighter. Very nice. Leslie, your polka dots are like, you must be type A. Those are like quite perfect. Oh my gosh. Julie's, Gail, your polka dots are perfect too. Marie's are quite, Bridget's, nice job. The Riley household, Miss Penny, Julia's, there's Barbara's. What'd you guys think about these polka dots? They were fun, right? Yeah, really fun and different. I love it. Cool. So give me a thumbs up if you guys are ready to start the bow. I think we're pretty close. Okay. If anybody needs to finish up the pumpkin, feel free. We can always make modifications to the pumpkin, but I just want to be mindful of time. Everybody's doing really well.
My black is not quite dry around the edges of the dots.
Mine isn't either. We're gonna do the outline. We're gonna do the bow next, which is like, it's gonna go on top of the pumpkin a little bit, but it's mainly gonna be like right in the middle of the pumpkin right here. So it shouldn't interfere, but mine is definitely a little wet too. I'll show you. It's like a little shiny in areas. No big deal. All right, so I'm gonna re-spotlight my screen. Don't hesitate to stand up and stretch for a minute. Maybe stretch your arms out, stretch your neck from side to side. Having good posture is hard sometimes. All right, so we're gonna have a lot of fun with this next step. We are going to use our black paint. I'm sure some of you still have some. I doubt you used it all. At least I hope you didn't. And we're gonna do the bow outline. So the bow outline is gonna be really fun. You're gonna use a small brush of your choice, and you gotta get the outline in. And we're gonna use a little bit of white paint to also fill it in on top of our pumpkin. So we gotta get the outline in first. So a small brush of your choice, maybe grab the smallest brush I sent you or the next size up, anything with a nice fine point. And you are doing your bow. So the center of the bow, which is like a rectangle or a square, is going to be right here, kind of where the pumpkin is. So right here where the pumpkin meets. We're
I'm
gonna
sorry,
do a
Megan, what color are you using for that?
black paint, black paint. Yep, black paint. You can do a square or a rectangle. I am just doing a square. This is for like the knotted part of the bow. You can make your bow really big. I'm just starting with that size center. If I need to make it bigger, I can. And I want you to think of how big you want your bow to be. So your bow can, I would say, have your bow kind of go above your pumpkin a little bit. So we're going to do the first one together. So I'm going to go from the top left corner of this square right here. And I'm going to do a bow coming up, like a line coming up. We're just doing outlines right now. And you can kind of lean back in your chair and say, well, how big do I want my bow to be? I want my bow to be pretty big. And then you're just going to kind of round it around the side. And it's going to come pretty, it's going to kind of come pretty straight in. And it's going to come to the bottom of the rectangle. You can make your bow rounded, you can make it square, doesn't matter. In the inspiration, it's kind of square on the edge. You can always make it square on the edge. So if I want to make mine square on the edge, I just bring out this corner a little bit. Because we're going to fill in some of this bow anyways. And if I wanted to make this edge down here a little more square, I could do that. See? And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now your bow doesn't have to be like perfectly flat. So my other side of my bow, I'm either going to I'll probably come up a little higher, or I might come down a little lower. So you can kind of pivot and turn your bow any way that you wish. For me, I am going to just kind of be in the moment. It's just going to come out here. I'm going to do fairly straight. It's rounded and I do fairly straight in. That's going to be my bow. It can be bent a little bit. Everybody's bows are going to look different. There we go. And then you're going to do the kind of strings hanging down. So these are going to be bended shapes. And they're going to be a little more narrow towards the top of the bow, and they're going to get a little bit bigger down towards the bottom. And we are covering up part of our beautiful pumpkin. Yes, it will be okay, I promise. You can have little kind of points on the end of your bow. Just doing the outline right now. And then this one is gonna kind of go over to the side a little bit. I'm kind of changing the shape. Just so it looks a little different. There we go. Nice. So we have a bow in place. And then what we're gonna do is, as that bow is drying, I'm gonna have you fill in the bow with white paint. So take a minute, find a clean brush. I just want you to stay in between the lines. Some of your black may be drying. It's okay. Just try not to like touch the black, but we do need to get a coat of white paint on. So I'm just cleaning off a like number 3 brush, 3, 4, or 5, something that, or you can even use your bigger brush if you wanted to. But we're gonna paint the interior of the bow white. Now there's no way of getting around this. This white paint is pretty thick, so you guys should be okay. You might need 2 coats, but just do a nice thin coat and then let it dry. You might need another, you might not. But just take your time filling inside of this bow, staying in between the lines. And some of your bow is already white if it is above the pumpkin, so you don't have to worry about that. The bow is going to have kind of white and gray kind of stripes on it. It'll be quite fun. And I'm just gonna check to make sure everyone is muted. Let's see here. Let's see here. Okay, perfect. This is where we're all just filling in all these details. Excellent. Staying in between, I'm kind of like outlining on the interior just to hold the shape. This is where our bow is just going to start jumping off. You're going to have to paint over some of those pesky black dots. This is the test of time to see if those are dry. They might look shiny. This paint is actually shiny, so they may actually not be wet anymore, because this paint, when it dries, I have a couple goops up here, but for the most part, this paint is such a high quality, it has a little bit of a shine to it, which is kind of neat. All right, so I am just gracefully painting. I'm using a tiny brush, it's taking me forever, so I apologize. Painting our bow white on the interior, and then we're gonna bring it to life with a little bit of our pattern here. This pattern would be fun. Has anybody ever painted this checkered pattern on anything before? Like black and, oh, I got a little bit of mucky black in my white. That's okay. Just put a little more paint onto it. You can let it dry too. But the bow is going to be black and gray and white anyway, so it's okay. But just take your time filling in the bow. Sometimes in these classes, it's fun just to slow down, play with these details. We've done a lot of detail-oriented classes, and sometimes we do bigger and easier topics. Sometimes it's fun to slow down, just to really get in all the nooks and crannies, nice clean edges. These are all the things that artists do without being told, and you do those things naturally, but I guide you through this class just to ensure you take the time to work on these details. and not to make you feel rushed. It's my goal anyway. Sometimes that's hard to do in 2 hours, but my goal is to not make you feel rushed. All right. Now you may need to do 2 coats in some places, so I'm just kind of leaning back and saying, okay, I have a bow on my pumpkin now. Great. We will add a little bit of black detail to our pumpkin so it doesn't get lost. We are going to add a lot more black contrast back to the bow, so don't worry about that too much. While our bow is drying, if anybody wants to go in and add the stem outline, you can. Actually, what we'll do is we'll just use the green and we'll just paint the stem. That would be fine. And then we'll use black to outline it. So if anybody wants to let your bow dry, we can shift to the green together. Use a small brush of choice. I grabbed a number 2. I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Any of those brushes will be fine. We're going to do a green stem and it's going to be behind the bow. So all of our leaves and all of our stem will be behind the bow, and we'll be using our green color for the stem. So you can figure out your stem doesn't need to go up straight. It can kind of turn one way or the other. It's a little wider towards the top. So my stem might be like this. And you're just going to paint it in entirely. And you can kind of change the shape of your stem as you're filling it in. There we go. And I'm going right up to the back of the bow. So the stem is overlaying the background. My stem is really small for my pumpkin. So what does that mean? That means my stem needs to be bigger. This is the little bit of mindfulness for these classes, is that I have a really big pumpkin. My stem needs to be a little bit bigger, Megan. So that's where I kind of lean back in my chair and you acknowledge these things, right? So maybe it needs to be a little bit more big on the bottom. Maybe it needs to go a little higher. Things need to be in scale to one another. There, that's a little bit more realistic. I'm going to outline that, so I'm not worried about it too much. And I'll add a little bit of depth and things. Add a little bit of depth to it. So that's a little bit more in proportions. And then I'm going to do some green leaves. So the green leaves, we're going to outline them. They're going to look a lot nicer, but you can add just a few here and there. So I'm just going to do a few green leaves, maybe coming up and over. These are all in the background. If you don't want to add leaves, you don't have to, but I am going to fill these in with green paint. I am going to make them stand out and have them look different, but these are all just base colors. You can also kind of re-outline your bow if you need to, so don't worry about that too much. If you get your green on your bow, it's not a big deal. But just add some green leaves. These are, again, base coats. We're going to outline each of these leaves with black, and we're going to add a little bit of white to these so they stand out. So don't worry if they look funny. This leaf needs to come behind my stem. And I'm going to do another leaf just kind of coming off over here. And I like to have a balance of color on the left and the right. I feel like my stem needs to come up a little higher. My stem is quite important. My pumpkin is just so big. There we go. And I might even add a little bit of the burnt sienna to my stem to make it a little bit more brown. So look at the size of your stem and look at the size of your pumpkin. Maybe even I'll take a little bit of that burnt sienna and just start to blend it in on one side, just to make this stem stand out. So I just put a little bit of the burnt sienna. If I don't like it, I can always change it, but I'm just doing this just to, my green's wet, so I'm just making the stem a little bit more brown just to see what it looks like. This is a no risk painting class. No one's being judged. There is no grades. I don't know if Linda, there's no grading here. We're all having fun. It's okay to experiment. And I'm doing it right live before everyone. So if I can do it, you can do it too. But the stem, I'm just adding a little bit of a brown too, just to make it look a little bit more natural. If you guys don't like this, you don't have to do it. The white bow is standing out like a sore thumb. It's gonna kind of dim down a little bit. I will do a black outline on the stem, so that will also make that look a little bit better. But I'm just doing focusing on my green leaves right now. We're letting the bow dry intentionally, and we're letting the green leaves dry too, because we're gonna come in and do outlines of these leaves so they look a little bit nicer. So basic green leaves. Kind of lean back in your chair and say, okay, do I need to add any more anywhere else? Do I have enough? For me, I have enough over here. I might just put like one other little green leaf over here on the left, so it's not like a lonely circus going on. So I might just tuck in a green leaf over here behind my bow. I'm kind of painting on top of my black a little bit. It's not that big of a deal. I can cover it up. But I'm just doing a little bit of a leaf, tucking in. Maybe another little leaf will come off the side. These leaves will look a lot better once we have a black outline on them. So I might even need to do a second coat over here. Not entirely worried about it. This should dry pretty quickly. So whenever you're ready to just, if these leaves are bothering you, you can do a black outline with your smallest brush of choice. Let's see here. I'm just getting a little bit more black on my palette. Using the smallest brush I gave you, it's either a 1 or a 2/0 fraction brush. This will give you the most control. You can do a full black outline on your leaves and on your stem. This will make your stem look a little bit more normal. You can use a thin line, you can use a thick line. This is also going to tie into all the other black on your painting. So take your time with the outlining. Don't feel rushed. I'm just doing my stem first. And I am going to lighten my stem a little bit, so not too worried about that. But I am going to do, I'm outlining each of my leaves. Sorry, I was looking for a tool. Let's see here.
Megan, a quick question for you.
How
I'm
can I
just
help?
now gonna start my stem. Did you outline in black and then color green, or did you put on green and then put on the black?
I did the black second.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. I did the base colors first, so they were there. We're gonna add in a little bit of highlighting to make these objects kind of look more realistic after. But getting the base coated is always a good step. Always, always. Because then you can paint over it. Okay, so I'm just gonna come in and do my black outlining on all these objects. This is gonna make all these elements look a whole heck of a lot better. You can actually like outline your leaves so they actually look like leaves. That's gonna be great. So it's not just a floating green object. How about that? All right. Ooh. And these leaves they can be pointy on the end. You can make them whimsical. We're going to add a little bit of white on these leaves too. If you wanted to add in any vein texture, you could. One way of adding vein texture, and this is kind of like another leaf that might be just coming up and in. You can kind of layer additional leaves in. So if you have any weird spots, like bring in a little bit of a leaf and just kind of tuck it in with a little bit of a black outline. You could always try that. So you can see it's coming. The white ribbon is still standing out like a sore thumb. That's fine. It's going to change very quickly here. All right. So I'm kind of looking at my leaves. I'm going to let those dry. If anybody wants to add any, like a small line down the middle of any of these, you could. We're going to add a little bit of a white accent to the center of these leaves. But if anybody wants to add like a little bit of a black line, you could. My stem might have like a little bit of a rounded bit on top. See how much that made that look a little bit better? Like there's actually a rounded top on the stem. I kind of did a smiley face at the top of the stem right here. And I'll hold this a little closer. You could also, if you wanted your pumpkin to stand out, you could use black paint. I'll show you what it looks like. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. You could outline your pumpkin, each of these rinds with black paint. This is optional. This will tie things together. It's totally up to you. If you want to use your burnt sienna, you can use your burnt sienna. This will change the kind of look and the feel. So I'm doing it as a guinea pig. If you like it, you can do it. But I'm just outlining each of these ridges. It does tie things together. You can see your pumpkin stands out now a little bit more. It complements all the colors that you've done. We're being patient and letting things dry. So again, I'll go over areas that you can outline in black. You can outline your leaves with black. You can create, if you have any green spaces that need a little bit of a leaf, you can take your black paint and you can create a little skinny leaf or a small leaf, kind of like there's layered leaves on the top of your pumpkin. You can do that. But outlining your stem, outlining your bow should already be outlined in black. And outlining these leaves. And then we'll switch to our bow should be almost dry. We'll do our bow here in just a minute, but we can always touch up our bow. If your bow needs any touch-ups, like if you put your green on your bow, you can go ahead and touch that up with a little bit of black. But there's 2 steps remaining once we've done and finished some of these outlines. We're going to put a little bit of a white accent on your leaves once the black dries on your leaves and on your stem. And then we're going to do the bow detail. But this is, I hope you're all enjoying this. It's really fun and different. It's very whimsical to me. All right. So what we're going to do as our next step, and if you're not done outlining, don't worry. I just want to be mindful of time. We're doing pretty well. Is we're going to do this checkered print pattern on our bow. And what we're going to do to create this is we're going to make a gray color, and we're going to make it, it's going to have an opacity to it. So what that means is we're going to make a light gray color. So get a dollop of white and add a tiny touch of black. And we're going to use our big brush. So the biggest brush I sent you. So there's my dollop of white right there. I'm going to take a tiny touch of black and I'm going to make a gray. And it's going to be like a medium tone gray. This is too light. I need a little bit more black. All right. Ooh.
So Megan,
Yeah, go ahead.
You're way ahead of me. I just finished filling in my leaves. I haven't done any outlining on the leaves at all because
No worries, no
they're
worries.
still wet.
I have not even started leaves, so you're ahead of me.
I know there's so much detail to this. Oh
I
my
just
gosh.
finished the stem. I haven't even started the leaves.
Oh my gosh, I love that you are all so detail oriented and you are just taking your time. And I know, like, I'm keeping an eye on the clock because I want to make sure we have plenty of time, which we do. So I will be mindful. I'll give everyone a solid 2 minutes just to kind of work on any finish up steps. So thanks for chiming in. Definitely don't want people to feel rushed. I'm just gonna mix this gray, but we won't do the bow until everybody's ready.
So I didn't fill in my entire white bow either. I'm just going back around now
Yeah.
and doing the edges of the white inside the bow.
Yeah,
So my
so
white
fill the
is gonna
bow.
be wet.
That's okay. Fill your bow in and then you can do the design on top after. No worries. No worries at all. So I'll give everyone a few minutes just to play with the details, whatever you're working on. Take your time.
Will this plaid cover up some of the black that's showing through underneath the white?
So yes, it will. My white, you can see the orange through. It's not perfect. So what we could do is we could do 2 coats of white to make it really stand out. However, the plaid is going to cover most of it.
Okay.
So if people are meticulous and you want your bow to be super white, feel free to do a second coat. No judgment zone here. Feel free to do that. Any work, any detail work that you're working on, whether it's outlining the leaves or outlining the stem, feel free to do that. I can just take my black and I can just do a visual check to make sure that everything is outlined. So let's see, I'm making sure that all of my leaves are outlined.
Megan, while you're working on that, mine's really wet. I'm just letting it dry a little bit. But the painting that originally, when you first came on and it showed behind you, you were asking for what we might be interested in.
Yes,
And it just
ma'am.
looked like it had some yellow in the sky and kind of a geometric landscape kind of thing. That looked like maybe it wouldn't be quite so difficult for those of us who are not very talented.
This one up here?
No, it was a big one behind you. It was like,
Well, this one?
yes.
Ooh, we could do that. Yeah. That's such a good one. It's actually really doable. I painted that in 2016, which was so long ago. And I love it because the forms are really simple and the sky is a blended gradient. And then it's just layered feels in front. And I think that could be a great choice for a future class.
Thank you.
Yeah, great suggestion. Great suggestion. It's one of those like oldies but goodies. Like, I just love it. Perfect.
I like the
Perfect. Yeah.
sailboats behind you too.
I'm sorry.
I like the sailboats behind you too.
Oh yeah, those were really fun. I did those with a team building class and I was like, it's so different. And it's so summery. It reminds me of the ocean a little bit. There's no mountains in it, so it's not Mallett's Bay quite, but awesome. Yeah, sailboats could be fun. Absolutely. Very good. Thanks. And open to feedback. So anytime you think of an idea, just shoot me an email. So I'll while we're waiting to do the bow with a greater group, another element, if folks want to consider it, is a little bit of white on your green too. So some of you are doing like outlining your leaves with black. Another thing that's in the inspiration, which is really quite cute, is on the interior of the black, doing a thin outline of white. You can do it on like maybe both sides or maybe one side of the leaf, just adding a little bit of brightness. So a thin white line on the interior of the black. You could do it on one side of the leaf. This is all on the interior. Now, this will start to kind of tie the lights and the darks all together. It's kind of fun. So it makes it look a little whimsical. You can decide where to do it, but that's an example of what it looks like. If you don't like it, you can cover it up. But it's just a little fun element of a little brightness with a little shading to ground our object. And it's not even, we're not blending this. These are more of like contrasting brush strokes, which still visually does the job per se. So I did a little bit of white on the interior. And we'll slowly transition when folks are ready. We're gonna make a dark gray color for the bow. It's not gonna be quite black, but it's gonna be pretty dark. And I'm trying to get the right shade. So if anybody wants to start mixing and playing with that, you can. I'm going for like a dark gray. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna water it down. So I have a little bit of a dark gray here. There's not a ton of paint pigment in this, which is good. And I might like kind of wipe some of it off just so there's like a little bit in this well. Many of you may not have this well, but you can just try to take a little bit of paint in one spot. And I want you to bring some water in it. So I want you to make a water wash. And this is whenever you're ready. I'm not going to do this yet, but I'm talking you through the steps because you should transition to making this color. So it's a dark gray and I'm making it watery because I want it to show up with a little opacity. And I'm wiping.
Didn't
some
you
of it
make a
off.
light gray earlier or no?
I'm making, sorry, it's kind of like, it's a dark gray.
No, earlier, I thought you made a light gray.
I probably did.
Okay, so
fine.
you didn't do anything to your white bow yet. It's still white?
The bow is still white. Yeah, we're going to be
Okay.
doing we're doing the pattern next. Yeah. We're doing the pattern next. And I'm making this kind of darkish gray color. And I'm trying to figure out what size brush. I think this medium size brush, this bigger brush that I sent you will work. And I'll look around the room and I want to make sure everyone's going to mix that gray. I don't want to jump ahead. So we're doing great on time. Oh, I'm going to add we'll do some final touches after our bow. Perfect. But I'm going to have everybody mix a gray first. So this gray, what we're going to do is we're going to make a dark gray and then we're going to make it into a water wash. So it's really fluid and it has less pigmentation because we're going to be doing vertical and horizontal brush strokes that are going to create this hatching ribbon texture. So we're going to have it watery, but we want it to be dark enough so it shows up. So but we want it to be thin as we apply it. So we have to kind of like make the color first and then water it down so it's the right pigment color. It's thrilling. So this is the dark gray that I came up with right here. It was black and white mixed together. I first made a really lighter gray and it was way too light. So I kind of had to add a little bit more black in this space. But this is, once you're doing that, this is what we're going to do. And there's no rush if you're not here yet. I'm going to take my brush. It has this paint on it. This paint is on my brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse half of the paint off this brush. So we're going to try this technique first. Rinse half the paint off this brush and then wipe your brush on your water cup. So there's water and paint on this brush. And what we're going to do is we're going to do vertical brush strokes. And we're going to leave gaps. Gently. See how this is creating pattern. And make sure you have water on your brush. This is an important piece. And I'm gonna rinse, I'm gonna just continue. My brush is still wet, so I'm just doing vertical brush strokes.
Shoot. that's-
Right. See how those are, it's kind of a soft gray. It's a little watery. We want it to be kind of lighter in color. And I'm not gonna dip any more paint on this brush. I'm just gonna get a little bit more water. Kind of wipe the tip of the brush off so it's not dripping. Because there's enough paint on this brush. And I'm gonna repeat this, but I'm gonna kind of change the direction of the lines. There we go. So you can change the direction of the lines. So maybe these ones over here, they're kind of just going more horizontally. It doesn't matter. Just maintain that gap in between your designs. This is a ribbon, right? So the pattern has changed, right? And then I'm going to, depending on how much paint you have left in your brush, I still have enough, but I might just put like a tiny bit more on my brush and get a little bit more water. Basically going to repeat this, play with this a little bit. If you end up doing something you don't like, just let it dry. I'm going to get a little bit more water, a little bit more paint. Again, watery is good. I rinsed off half the paint on my brush, so it's just a tinge of paint, but it's the right color. And then I'm going to continue. I'm going to repeat the process, so it's horizontal. So you can kind of figure out where you want to do it. I'm just going to be courageous and go for it. And I'm just doing a gentle sweep. If you want to go back and get a little paint, if you want to get more water on your brush, maybe kind of wipe off whatever paint is on your brush, that might help you. And I'm using the full width of this brush. So you can kind of turn and bend your brush as you see fit. You can see how we're creating this horizontal striping and vertical striping to kind of create this bow detail. Now we're gonna even add a little bit more shading to this bow to make it look a little fancier, but this is just some of the texture. You all got this, trust me. You all got this. And then I might use like the edge of this brush just to kind of get some of these. So if these cross hatches are coming down, the other ones have to kind of come down this way a little bit. And if you happen to go outside the lines, just use your finger to swipe it away. So you can see how we're creating this banded ribbon. You can always come in. For me, I might come in and like that second coat of white probably would like make the bow a little bit brighter. So if I wanted to come in and put a little bit more white in between these white blocks to really make the bow jump out, you could. But I'll let people play with that step if you wanted to do that. If anyone needs help, please let me know. Water on your brush will help tremendously. This is tricky. It requires a little patience. So if it's not working out, if you're frustrated, don't worry. You can let it dry and you can fix it. Don't worry. I'm just going to come in with a little extra white paint to really make the bow pop. And then I might since I have the white paint on, I might do a little bit of highlighting on my stem, maybe. Could always change it. And then I'll show you how to add, we'll add a little bit of shading to our bow once we're done. So we'll really add a little bit more dimension. I'm just adding a little bit of white in these brighter spots just to make it stand out. These are just little things. kind of like in between the checkered that we just created. And if you want like the middle of this bow to stand out, you can use your white to really make it stand out if you wanted to. Or you could go back and get your gray and you could tone it down. So anywhere you need to make like color adjustments, this bow is just black and gray and white. So anywhere you need to make a change, like don't feel like you can't, you can always change it. Always, always. You have the tools and the support to do that. And doing the bow is definitely a little trickier, so I applaud you all for approaching it courageously. But I'll give you all a few minutes to play with that. I'm just doing some touch-ups on the white. There is a little bit of like the bow fold, so the loop of the bow. So if anybody wants to add loops on the underside of the bow on the left side has a loop. So on the underside, you can do a little bit of a rounded feature. If anybody wants to add a little bit of a loop on the bow, you could do that. And then we can fill that in with a little bit of gray or a little bit of white to make it look like a loop. If you wanted to add a loop on both sides, you could, doesn't matter. I might add just like a little one over here. And then I might use just a little bit of this gray, light gray or dark gray, just to fill this in a little bit. You could even use a little bit of white. But this is a little bit of shading. So using a dark gray or a light gray, you can see how it created a little bit of shading on the underside of the bow. So we'll do some shading to our bow next once folks are done playing with those steps. And the shading's quite easy actually. You're basically just going to pick one side of the bow. And for me tonight, it will be maybe the right side of this bow. Oh, sorry, this right strap of the bow on the left side. I might just make this line a little thicker. See what that does. See how it adds a little shading? So the right strand that's hanging down on the left side, I'm just making this line a little thicker. Just adds a little bit of shading to the bow. See that right there? And then if you wanted to do the same, maybe to the left side of the left strap, you could just make this a little bit thicker. And you can extend that out if you wanted to, you don't have to. I may cover that up. Who knows? We're just being playful here. You can add some points on the ends of your bows to make it a little more pointy. As whimsical or cartoonish as you wish. This is where you can do any final touches. So maybe it's outlining the bow. This is where outlining your bow in black again will really stand out. Because you might have gone over the lines. These are all the details. Maybe you're still outlining some of the edges up top. I'm super excited to see how everyone's doing. If anyone needs any help, please let me know. I feel like you're all in the zone, so let me know how I can support you. I'm going to outline the bow edges on the top.
When you started the checkered pattern on the bow,
Yeah.
can you re-show how you did that? Because I was way behind.
Totally. So the easiest thing to do with the checker pattern, did you make a dark gray yet?
Kind of. I have yeah, I think it's a medium-ish gray.
Okay, so that will be fine. So take your biggest brush, put like a little bit of gray on it. And this is what worked well for me. I put gray on my brush and then I washed half of it off, which means I want some of the gray like still on the bristles. So I'll show you what I did because I'm pretty much done with this gray. I put some gray paint on my brush And you can kind of wipe some of it off on the edge of your plate. So you have just like a little bit. I'm gonna wash half of it off, and I'll show you the consistency. It's gonna be like a little drippy. You can kind of wipe it off a little bit on the edge of your cup. And now your brush should be gray and wet. That this gray wet consistency on the brush is how I did the vertical and the horizontal checkered pattern.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. It gives you the opacity, because what we're going for is where the lines overlap, it's a little darker. It's not perfect. This one over here, I think it did it better, but it still kind of shows the checkeredness. And if anybody wants to be meticulous and like do it again and like use a lighter color, I do not care. Like, you do whatever you want, but it was fun to give it a try, but the opacity helps for sure.
What did you fill in the loops of the bow?
The lower loops, I
Yeah.
used a dark gray color.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So again, I did black outlines on my pumpkin rinds. It helps tie all of this detail together. I outlined my bow with some black paint. The lower loops of the bow, I filled in with a dark gray. Another tip is if I wanted to take a little bit of white and kind of outline the lower loop with a little bit of white, I could, once they're filled in. Just to kind of highlight that there's like a little bit of light shining in here, like there's a loop. If anybody wanted to like add a little bit of like a little line of white or a light gray, like in addition, you could, totally optional. I just saw it, so I thought to talk about it. But any black outlining. So the best thing that you can do is look around your painting, maybe stand up and like take 2 steps back just to kind of reflect on your painting from afar. Say, okay, what do I need to change? What do I need to modify? For me, I don't like some of the white I put on my green stem, so I'm going to cover it up on some of the areas. It's just a little too white on my stem for me, so I'm just going to cover it up a little bit. And just some spots. I have my brown, I have my green. We all will notice something that we want to change or modify, and that is what artists do. So it doesn't mean you made a mistake. It means you just want to change something, and every artist changes something often. Some artists start over, but we don't need to start over. I have a whole bag of tricks to help you. All right. So we're doing really good on time. We're at an hour and 48 minutes. So we had a great action-packed detailed class today. We can check in. Some of you might be done. It looks like Julia is done. Look at Julia's bow. Oh my goodness, that was beautiful. I'm not sure if she just turned off her screen. That was gorgeous. So if anyone wants to take a minute to flip around your pictures, I'm also going to share with you the AARP Vermont folder that I set up. If you wanted to take a picture of your painting and drop it in that folder, we always love to see your work. I love looking at it because I can see all the details you've done. But there's Miss Gales. Look at these bows, ladies and gentlemen. Julie, oh my goodness. Gail, you did awesome. Amazing. Look at these. Barbara, Melinda, Linda's, I love this. Everybody has different size bows and different size pumpkins. Patty, look at your pumpkin, looks so happy. Oh my goodness. Look at these spotted backgrounds. Donna, nice job. Your gray looks awesome. Are you like, I don't know, Donna. That was not a very confident look. There's Miss Leslie's, awesome. There's Miss Penny's. You all did really good. I applaud you for being so open-minded and on how you approached your paintings today. I'm going to go grab that folder for if anybody wants to. I love seeing your work, but I know other people do too. I'm sharing that with the AARP lead that I'm working with. I'm just going to go to my drive and grab that. So hang on one moment so I can grab that folder for you. And I encourage you to click on it and at least open it. Let's see if it'll do it for me. Okay. Get link. Okay, copy. Okay, so I'm going to drop in the chat window. Super proud of everyone. Everyone did such a good job. Everyone in the meeting. Okay, so if you are open to sharing your work, click on the link that I just posted. It's a Google Drive folder. You only have access in this room. So the link is not available publicly. You only can click into this if you have access to this folder. You each have access to this folder. Click into it. If you've painted anything else with us in the past, I know some of you have put things in there and you can see all those fun things. Upload your photos to that folder. We'd love to see them. But what is this, Julia? My pumpkin stem looks like a pickle. Oh my gosh, so funny. Meg, thank you so much for being here. I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. So nice to see you. I hope to see you all again in December. If anyone's interested in doing water classes with me in the future, feel free to find me on Facebook or check out my website. But I want to say a big thanks to ARP Vermont again for having us. Be sure to check out their
Yes, thank
resources and additional events. But I hope you had fun. I hope this wasn't too stressful. I like to mix it up, keep you all on your toes. So I hope you had fun with this.
I have another one of my questions, Megan. I'm so sorry.
Sure. No, go ahead.
I feel like my bow is too small and I don't know how, like the stripes, I don't know how to make it bigger without really starting over. And I know I don't have the patience for that. So
Use white paint to make it bigger.
I think the part that needs it is the tails over the orange. Here, let me show you. Okay, some of it's still wet. I want these
That looks
tails.
good.
No, but I like the tails to be more in proportion.
Yeah, so
Like-
your tails need to be a little wider and a little longer. So use white paint, Renee. You got this. Use white paint like you're making them bigger. And then once the
Uh-huh.
white's dry, just re-extend your fancy details.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay,
Yay.
where did I go wrong? It just does not seem anywhere close to what you created.
Oh, no way. Your stripes on your bow are a little lighter.
Wow.
Okay, my pumpkin doesn't seem like it actually pumpkined.
I think it did. Pull it back a little bit and hold it a little higher. I think it pumpkined. It looks like a pumpkin to me.
I might be too close and too
Maybe.
critical.
I think so, because yours looks exactly like mine. The only difference is that the design on your bow is a lighter gray. It's the
Okay.
same thing. It's the same painting.
Megan,
My
Megan,
stem's also a lot bigger. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's Corinne. I just wanted to make sure, I couldn't make today's. I wanted to make sure that I get the link for Sunday.
You got
did-
it.
Thank you. Okay,
You're
because I have,
welcome.
thanks. Okay, take care.
For sure. I want to thank everyone for coming. I'm here to help with anything. Again, the size of your stem, my stem is big because my pumpkin was big. I went like crazy tonight. I just made a big stem and I like it. It's a little like cartoonish, whimsical for me, but it works. But yeah, I mean, changing the color, I think you overall did really well. I think you did great. Yeah. What'd you think about the polka dots? I thought that was a really fun thing to try. Yeah, super fun. I
And
love that.
thank you. I'm a stroke patient ×2, so you did a very good job helping me understand. I have a lot of aphasia, so understanding what someone's saying is very difficult. You did a
Oh.
wonderful job. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's so awesome. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you were able to, stay focused and try to relax. I think probably the instruction helped if it was a good mode for you. It allowed you to really be a part of the class. So I welcome you back. I hope to see you in December, if not the new year.
I'm hoping. It's like I said, it's very difficult because I have a hard time comprehending what someone instructs, but you did a beautiful job saying it in a way that I felt like I wasn't 5, but that I could understand what you were saying, if that makes sense.
So
So thank
wonderful.
you.
I thank you for the feedback. Absolutely.
And I will be here in December.
Yay, awesome. Well, we're painting, it's gonna be like a sage green background with candy canes on it. It's gonna be so fun.
And can you post your website for the watercolor?
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and just find the.
Because prior to my strokes, I used to paint and it's hard, it's not coming back to me yet. So this has
Yeah.
really been very helpful.
So on my Facebook page, that's my personal website. on my Facebook page. I actually posted
Okay.
2 watercolor classes. Here's my Facebook page. If anyone's not following my Facebook page, I definitely encourage you to follow that.
Okay, awesome.
Sometimes I offer free classes, sometimes I offer paid classes. I have a great watercolor set that I've been testing that's really affordable. It's only 13 bucks. It
Oh,
comes
wow.
with everything you need. It's pretty good quality. It's not like really amazing, but it's plenty for like playing around and having a fun craft. So if anybody wants to be a part of that, please let me know. But continue to paint, continue to stay in touch. If anyone needs to contact me after tonight's class, my contact information is always on these pieces of paper. I always have this here if you ever need to reach out to me for help or whatever. So most importantly, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. It was a pleasure to be here, and I hope you enjoyed the class.
Thank you so
All
very
right.
much for your wonderful instruction.
Oh, you're so welcome. I hope you all have a great night, and I look forward to seeing you in December, and I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you, and I love, especially, I would love the picture behind you. That whenever you
I
feel
think
like
that's
you
a
can
great
do that, let us
suggestion.
know.
I think it's a great suggestion. We'll do that for
Thank
next
you.
year.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.